Okay, so one of the daughters of one of the advantages of having a daughter is that they like playing schools, and so I have a little whiteboard in my home. Okay, so this is both going to be revision of the tariff diagram, but really it's kind of a recap of the diagram for some people who missed a lesson the other day to go on a trip. Yeah. So what we're looking at then is the idea of a tariff. Yeah. Yes, there you go. Comedy whiteboard. A tariff. A tariff. On imports. Yeah. So there's a diagram that goes with this that isn't perhaps the one that you would necessarily expect. Yeah. We're going to have a look at this. We're going to have a look at this in the lesson tomorrow. But what is a tariff? Tariff's very simple. It's simply a tax on imported products. So the aim of that tax, obviously, is to increase the price of imports, which should lead to a decrease in imports. As a result of that, hopefully, consumers will now buy at home instead. Oops. So therefore, that's going to lead to an increase in consumption inside the UK. It also means that local firms can sell. They can sell for higher prices. So therefore, there should be an increase, potentially in profit for those local firms. The main, that looks a bit looks even worse than usual. It does. But the main disadvantage, obviously, is if you're an importer, it's a disadvantage, and the disadvantages are for local consumers. But what I'm going to focus on here really is just the diagram that goes with this. The evaluation, the evaluation tariffs. If you're looking here for revision, I'll do it in a separate revision video. If you're here because you're just trying to, if you're Kate or Jen or Winnie, then we're going to do the evaluation in tomorrow's lesson. So what this model this model makes certain assumptions. So let's think about what it assumes. It assumes firstly that you can buy as much as you want of this product, and we'll assume we're looking at something like coal. You can buy as much as you want from China, more or less, from the world market. You can buy as much as you want from the world market at a constant price. So essentially, there are unlimited supplies. Now that's not literally true. But it's probably true enough for the UK in the market for coal. We don't consume that much of it. So you'll see what the implications of that are in a minute. And secondly, what we're saying is that UK producers, however, have differing efficiency. So UK producers, some are fairly efficient. So in the coal market, those are the ones where the coal is near to the surface. But some are really quite inefficient. The coal is many kilometres underground, and their costs are going to be much higher. So once you get there, we can start saying, well, what does our diagram look like? You see how gentle this is. We're not going to have another board falling off. My OCD students are going to get upset with little bits of board marker, but anyway, never mind. So what we're saying then is, this is, we'll look at it from the point of view of the EU, in fact, because the UK can't set its own tariffs because we're part of the EU, and that's what's called a customs union, and it has a common external tariff. And what that means is that the UK has the same tariff against, say, America as France and Germany and so on. So what we're saying, first of all, is here is the demand for coal in the UK. It's a standard demand curve. As price goes up, and demand's going to fall. But what we then said is, well, let's suppose that the world price, PW, is £100 a unit for coal. Yeah, that wasn't very good, was it? It's quite hard doing this from the side. So the world supply, that's supposed to be horizontal, the world supply looks like that. And therefore, in the absence of any local producers, then there'll be 200 million tonnes of coal bought in the UK. And it's all at the moment coming from the world market. So the question we've got to ask ourselves, and my daughter, unlike me, has many different coloured pens. The question we've got to ask ourselves is, what would cause you to buy from a British producer instead of buying it from the world market? And the answer is fairly simple. If it's cheaper, you'll buy it from the domestic market. But what we said is that some firms are very efficient and can supply even if price is very low, but some firms are inefficient and require a higher and higher price to be able to actually compete. So what we end up with is world supply looks like that. Because that's based on marginal cost, if you remember. So those are our inefficient producers who are operating. They can only survive if prices are very, very high. So how much of this market do domestic firms have, EU or UK firms or whatever? Then what we're saying, that's not SW, sorry. And that's SEU or SUK, something like that. So what we're saying is that, what we're saying then is that domestic firms can, as long as their marginal cost is below the world price, then they'll be in that market, and that's, say, 80 million units. And what we've now discovered is that imports, therefore, are 120 million. Total demand is 200 million. The UK gets 80 million of that, and therefore imports are 120 million quid. So what's the effect of imposing a tariff in this market? Essentially quite straightforward. What's going to happen is that suppose that we impose a £50 tariff, £50 tax. Then what's going to happen is the world price is going to be driven up to 150 quid. Each ton of coal that we bring in from abroad has to pay has to pay £50 to the EU or UK government, whatever. So what that means, is that that's fine, sweetheart. What that means then is that the world supply curve, and these are even less level than the ones that are in the classroom, is driven up like that. Their costs are driven up by, that's 50 quid there, all the tax and so on. So what happens in the diagram? Two things happen. Firstly, total demand falls. Because the price is higher, we use less coal in the UK. Diagrammatically, that looks like, say, 160 million tonnes. But a second thing happens, and what happens is that, of course, more UK firms can now compete. Because the price is higher, these coal mines here that were previously inefficient, or they're still inefficient, but that were previously unable to compete, now the price is above their marginal cost, and they're able to supply, say, a total of 110 million. So what's now happened is imports were 120, but now imports are only 50 million. So imports have fallen from 120, now they're only 50. What's happened to the EU or UK supply is it was 80, and now that's gone up to 110. So the first thing we can easily see is that there's been an increase in the market share, increasing the market share for the UK of that much. Imports have fallen. Students often say that imports fall from 200 to 160, but that's not true. That demand falls from 200 to 160, but imports fall further because some of the market is now taken by domestic suppliers. So what else can we say? We can show the value of the total value of the tax revenue to the government, because we know that imports are now 50, the tariff is 50 quid, so we can multiply those together and say if that's millions, it's 2,500 million pounds. Is the value of the tax, and diagrammatically that's 50 quid times 50 units. It's that area there. The second thing we can show is that UK local producers are much better off. The original ones, the original 80 million units, they're now getting 50 quid extra. So they're getting an increase in their price. But also there are new producers who are also getting producer surplus. So producer surplus rises by those arrow amounts. Producer surplus, the difference between the minimum price that producers would accept and the actual market price. And the last thing we can show is that bad things have happened to consumer surplus. I don't know where these yellow pens are going to show up. It's very exciting. Can you see that? No. Maybe. So consumer surplus, it used to be down here, down here to here, and then, better not get my daughter's pens dirty, or I'll be in big trouble. So consumer surplus, used to be that area there. That's not really very legible, is it? What we got? Brown, pink. There's no bloody black one. Oh, for goodness sake. So it used to be that. Now price has gone up, so consumer surplus is now only the blobby area here. Yeah. So in summary, what we can say, if we just lose this bit off the bottom for now, there have been winners and losers, as is usually the case. So in terms of who's happy, then what we can say is happy firms include UK domestic producers, although of course any other domestic producers who use this aren't very happy at all. So when the Americans imposed tariffs on steel, for example, there were huge job losses all through the American industry in things like the car sector because they couldn't compete. But anyway, UK or /EU or whatever saying, coal producers, they're happy. Anybody who uses coal isn't very happy at all. And other people who are happy is the government, because there's tax revenue for the government, and in some LEDCs, tariff revenue is quite significant. Who's sad? That's again fairly obvious. Consumers are sad, because they've had a reduction in their consumer surplus. Also sad is UK firms using the import as a raw material. Because their costs have just gone up, and obviously in foreign firms who are paying the tariff, they're not very happy either. So, or even if they don't pay the tariff, they're unhappy. They're unhappy that they're selling fewer imports. And really, that's that. So what we're going to do in the lesson tomorrow is we're going to pick up on that and kind of discuss a bit more who wins, who loses, the extent to which tariffs really work, and so on and so forth. There we go.